Sports Network. I'm one of your co-hosts for the Sam and Sam Show, Sam McGinnis. I'd like to welcome on my other co-host, Sam Teets.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again today, Sam McGinnis, and it's a pleasure to be with you here the day after Thanksgiving.
And this time I didn't say the Grueling Truth Sports Network a second time while trying to introduce myself, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, you're getting better at during the intro, McGinnis. You're getting a lot smoother with it.
Yeah, I need to come up with my own thing though. But today we got a good show for you. We got NFL news, NBA news, college football, all the normal stuff, and then we've got some more of your NHL new divisions we're going to be covering. So we've got a great show for you, and then thinking and dreaming to finish it off.
Yeah, I guess we can kickstart it with the NFL news and the news of the hour, I guess you could say. We covered this already in the NFL show earlier today, but there have been some developments since then. The NFL originally scheduled the Pittsburgh Steelers to play the Baltimore Ravens for, I guess you could call the night game on Thanksgiving. That was their third matchup on Thanksgiving. Of course, a bunch of Baltimore players, including J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram, tested positive, so decided to move the game back to Sunday. So they moved the rivalry game back. People, of course, are upset about it because they wanted to see that awesome game on Thanksgiving. It's also a game that, as a rivalry game, the Steelers prepared a lot for it, so did Baltimore. The Steelers were kind of upset because this is the second time now. They had it with Tennessee early in the year, where the NFL rescheduled the game on them or moved the game on them, despite the fact that Pittsburgh didn't test positive. They just had, at the time, Ravens, and then at the other time, Tennessee Titans players testing positive. They've now moved the game back even further to Tuesday because more Ravens players tested positive today. More personnel did as well. And Lamar Jackson is one of the players who tested positive with COVID-19. Lamar still will not be available for the Tuesday game, which would have been, if they had moved it back so that Lamar could play, it would have clearly been, that would have almost been cheating in my mind. But Lamar will not be available on Tuesday. They're just doing this to make sure that they have the spread contained and it's not going to continue spreading throughout the locker room.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And having been a player this year that's had teams not been able to play them because of COVID and not playing a game for literally, I think, over a month, this is just disappointing. It's annoying, especially when you're getting ready. It's the day of, and then they're like, well, we can't do it today. I mean, you've got all hyped up, you're all ready to go, and then they're like, well, hold up. So that's just unfortunate. It's the reality of COVID, but hopefully, vaccine on its way. So hopefully next season we won't really be discussing players getting COVID-19 anymore.
Yeah, I think next fall sports season we will be in the clear. I just question right now, the winter sports season is obviously what you got to worry about because of everything pulling out the way. It's like by the time the Olympics roll around in the summer, I imagine by then everything will have cleared up to some degree, or at least we'll be able to do it more comfortably. But for now, everything's still kind of where it was basically when everything broke out a couple of months ago. Some other NFL news to run through real quick. Washington, speaking to the Thanksgiving Day games, Washington is now leading the NFC East with a 4-7 record, thanks to a victory over the Dallas Cowboys. It's a pretty big victory too, 41-16. Alex Smith and rookie running back Antonio Gibson leading the way. I mean, 41-16. Dallas Cowboys doing Dallas Cowboys things, but how sad is it the leader of the NFC East is 4-7?
Also, how sad is it that it's the not Washington Redskins?
The team that doesn't actually have a name. I saw someone say this earlier on Twitter. The team that doesn't have an actual name has a stronger identity than any other team in the NFC East.
How is that?
Well, let's look at it this way. Ron Rivera right now is doing a great job building a culture in Washington. And frankly, and we look at it in Philadelphia, you would ordinarily say that has a strong culture. Well, it really doesn't right now. Because Doug Peterson, from what I've heard, Adam Schefter has said that if the Eagles don't win this division, people are going to get fired in Philadelphia. That could be Doug Peterson, and there's been some internal strife there in Philadelphia's locker room. Joe Judge is just establishing a culture much like Ron Rivera right now. So they're kind of in a similar boat. And Mike McCarthy has absolutely lost the locker room in Dallas. So to me, Washington, despite not having a team name, is actually probably the strongest semblance of team right now within that division. Maybe New York's also up there on the same pedestal, but those two teams, the ones with new head coaches, are actually doing much better than Dallas or Philadelphia.
Which is interesting because normally that's quite the opposite. Normally the Cowboys and the Eagles have better locker rooms. Washington is not one you'd think of.
Well, no, especially not with Dan Snyder, the owner, the way everything's been with him so far the past year and everything that's come to light in reports or in long-winded or in newspaper articles that have been researched for months. I mean, you would not expect this to be the franchise that's thriving, the franchise that's building a lot of character, but it's done a great job so far. And part of that is Alex Smith returning to be the quarterback because he obviously has a huge veteran presence there. Part of it's guys like Ryan Kerrigan who have been around for a long time still being there. So there's a lot that goes into this. But Ron Rivera has been huge for it. And also some of the decisions they made in the front office has also really impacted this team. But I like Washington right now, and I think they're going to hold on to win this division.
Remember who Alex Smith used to play for is what I have to say in a little bit of response to that. I don't know who's going to win the division, but you have to remember Alex Smith was a good quarterback, despite the fact that he probably made an awful decision in going to the Redskins at the time. He was really good in Kansas City. Granted, he had weapons and so on and so forth, but he was still a good quarterback regardless. So don't just count him out right away. Again, though, just find a name by next season, okay?
Yeah, just find
a name. Just find one.
But I would like to point out that he was actually traded to Washington from Kansas City. He did sign an extension there, but he was actually traded to Washington to begin with. So it wasn't like he decided to go there in free agency.
My bad. But yeah, even still, signing an extension was probably not the greatest idea.
But at the same point, it was probably his last big contract, though, so I can kind of understand why he would go for that. And he's still making that money, by the way, now that he gets to come back from the injury. So that's good for him. Some other NFL news here real quick. Buccaneers center A.Q. Shipley has had a neck injury. It's actually advised that he retire, which is kind of shocking because, I know, right? I mean, this is something we didn't anticipate. He's actually started, I think, the last 2 games for Tampa Bay because they had an issue at guard. One of their guards, Ali Marpet, who was a Pro Bowl caliber player, was hurt. So they moved their starting center to guard. They plugged A.Q. Shipley, who's been a veteran, who's been around the league for quite a while. They plugged him at center. Now it sounds like he's not going to play this week. And he's probably not going to play ever again. So that's a huge loss for Tampa Bay, and obviously it just sucks for A.Q. Shipley. I mean, you can't being a veteran playing football your entire life and suddenly being told one day you have a career-ending injury. I mean, that just gotta sting. I mean, I can't imagine what that would feel like. Other guys, Adam Thielen, Todd Gurley, Denzel Ward, some of the notable players that will not play Sunday. Mitchell Trubisky is back at the helm for the Chicago Bears. That can never go wrong.
It's like, here's your choices. Not a great quarterback or not a great quarterback. Pick.
It's not even not a great quarterback. It's a below average quarterback at this point. I mean, talk about Trubisky versus Nick Foles. They're both bad. They've both been bad this year.
Man, Mitchell Trubisky and then Nick Foles, I think 10 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. That would be like if Jameis Winston just didn't throw the ball as much.
It's worse than that because Jameis Winston at least moves the ball downfield. Nick Foles, when that offense is going, he can't move the ball downfield whatsoever. I don't know if it's age. I don't know if it's just the system he's in. But right now, Nick Foles does not look like an NFL quarterback, and neither does Mitchell Trubisky. But speaking of not looking like an NFL quarterback, Mike Glennon is going to be the starter for the Jacksonville Jaguars this weekend. And the Cincinnati Bengals, after losing Joe Burrow, are going to have to decide between starting Brandon Allen or Ryan Finley. So maybe Nick Foles is not the worst quarterback in the NFL. Maybe Mitchell Trubisky is not the worst quarterback in the NFL. You might have 2 or 3 worse ones who are going to get starting jobs this coming weekend. So injury bug setting in, making for some weird starting decisions.
I'll just say pick Ryan Finley, not because I know almost anything about either of those people, but now I get to mention that I met Ryan Finley. So
did Mike have him come through your practices one time?
That's why. That's how we met him. It was nice. Fun fact of the day, though, for anybody that likes meeting people like that, they're just people too. It's just your fun fact of the day. Nothing special happens. There's no aura around them.
Yeah, just regular guys. But Ryan Finley has a chance to start. It sounds like Brendan Allen might get the gig, though. We'll see what happens there. The huge matchup this weekend, just one more quick thing. Huge matchup this weekend between the Kansas City Chiefs and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers just had a pretty significant loss to the Los Angeles Rams this past weekend.
Yeah.
But now we get to see them play Kansas City Chiefs. And it's basically Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady. You can never pass up that kind of matchup, the past versus the future. So it's really going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I would take Kansas City in this game.
So
it's still going to be a fun one, right? It's still got to be a fun matchup.
Here's my thing. Minus maybe one team, every hard team the Buccaneers have played, they have lost to, and Tom Brady hasn't done very well against. Now, I don't know if that's just fluke and he's getting used to a new system or what that is, but you can't ignore that consistency, right? So they've lost to the Rams. They've lost to the Saints twice. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, I mean, they lost to the Bears, who I'm not even a good team, masqueraded. But yeah, I think for that reason, I'm going to have to pick Kansas City. Not to say Tom Brady is even being a poor quarterback right now. He's not, but he's just having a hard time keeping up with those good teams. Even if Kansas City's defense wasn't as good, do you expect Tom Brady to throw more touchdowns and go further, or do you expect Patrick Mahomes right now to
Well,
do
I
so?
think the quarterback difference is part of the reason I keep Kansas City the edge. It's not that Tom Brady's a bad quarterback. He's still above average quarterback, still a top 10 guy, I think.
He's still doing good. It's just he's not where he was.
He's thrown fewer interceptions this year than Russell Wilson has. So he's still playing at a very high level. And they do have wins this year against the Green Bay Packers, which is 38-10, against the Las Vegas Raiders, 45-20. So they have some wins against good teams. My issue right now with Tampa Bay is the offensive line. We just mentioned AQ Shipley's going to be gone. So you have a problem with the offensive line. You can't really run the ball, despite the fact that Ronald Jones had a couple of good games this year. Those few really good games are carrying a lot of bad ones. And when I watch Tom Brady, he's trouble moving the ball down the field and throwing it deep right now. He's not throwing the ball deep very much. He's not taking advantage of Chris Godwin. He's not taking advantage of Mike Evans. He's not taking advantage of Antonio Brown. So they have all these offensive weapons, and that's great. The issue is that they're not able to take deep shots that Jameis Winston can make. Jameis Winston has one of the strongest arms in the NFL, despite all his wild inaccuracies. Tom Brady right now, he's 43 years old, 44 years old. That arm is nowhere near what it used to be. And I would put him, he's still got a stronger arm, in my opinion, than Drew Brees at this point, but he's starting to really decline in terms of how far he can push the ball down the field in a single play. I think that's piling into Tampa Bay's offensive struggles to some degree. He's still, like I said, above average quarterback, but no longer that MVP caliber player that we saw maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Now,
not even, maybe just 3 or 4 years ago at this point.
Fortunate note for Tampa Bay fans, this is the last difficult matchup you've got this year against a really good team. After this, you play the Vikings, Falcons, Lions, and Falcons again. You should probably win all 4 of those.
They should probably win all 4. I would not rule out the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are a very underdog team. They have Dalvin Cook. They have Adam Thielen. Usually they'll not this weekend. They have Justin Jefferson. It's a pretty good team. They didn't just lose to the Cowboys. Before that, they had beaten the Green Bay Packers. So, they'd come with 1 point of beating, within 1 point of beating the Tennessee Titans and the Seattle Seahawks. So they've been right there the entire year. I wouldn't rule out the Vikings, but I would still give Tampa Bay an advantage in that matchup.
Yeah, at the very least, you've got an easy schedule following this game.
Yeah, so you should be able to calm down and just settle in there towards the end of the season. Oh, and by the way, the Detroit Lions still suck.
Yeah, fun. It's a tradition to watch them lose on Thanksgiving, by the way, especially to the Texans and their defense, and watching Matthew Stafford throw a pick 6 to a freaking lineman. He threw a pick 6 to a lineman. Oh, good.
Dude, I forgot what time the game started, so I missed like the first 7 or 8 minutes.
I turned
the TV on. In the first 5 minutes of having the TV turned on, it's a JJ Watt pick 6, and you fumble and lose the ball twice. So you turn the ball over 3 times in the first 5 minutes I had the TV on. I was like, what the heck is going on here? And we're still close at halftime. I think it was the second half when it really pulled away, and Houston just took over.
Yeah, I think, new coaching, a new defense, and maybe people who don't turn over the ball would be nice. I think maybe
Maybe a new franchise would be nice. Is that what you're saying?
Line is in a good shape now. Oh, it's sort of.
It sounds like you're saying you need a new team, Sam McGinnis. That's what you're saying.
Matthew Stafford is still a good quarterback. He's having a bad year, but he is a good quarterback. He's competent. Franchise, you keep him. You keep Galladay, good receiver. Your running back situation actually isn't too bad. Adrian Peterson had a few runs back-to-back that were
in the second half, he was pretty good.
And then you've got Kerryon Johnson. So you're not necessarily needing something at running back.
You also have DeAndre Swift, who just missed last game. He'll be back eventually.
So maybe improve a little bit at wide receiver, but I think that defense and coaching really do need an overhaul.
Yeah, if I'm looking at offensively, the offensive line's not as bad as it used to be. I still like Stafford, even though he's not having a good year like you said. You got TJ Hawkinson at tight end. He's probably going to be a Pro Bowler this year. Kenny Galladay is, in my mind, a top 10 receiver when healthy. I think you still need, because Marvin Jones is getting older, I think you need a second receiver on that offense. And then I think you just need to pour everything you have into the defense. Because your defense right now is not good.
The defense needs an overhaul. What are cornerbacks? What are linebackers? What's the defensive line? Those aren't things. Yes, they absolutely are. You got scorched. Get a defense and get a new coach.
Yeah, the new coach needs to come first, though, before you do anything else. But we'll move on now. So I think we've beaten NFL news to death. So how about your NHL news and division predictions? Let's get into that.
All right, yeah. So we've got new division predictions. If these actually end up going through the new NHL divisions, I found this one actually much easier to predict than the Metropolitan. Probably, maybe easier. I don't remember too much about the Canadian one when I was doing that one, but this was a little bit easier for me to decide on. But the teams you've got in this division include the Avalanche, the Coyotes, the Golden Knights, the Stars, the Sharks, the Kings, and the Ducks. And I want to start off by saying I think the clear favorite here has got to be the Avalanche for this division. I'm going to explain why here real quick. You've got a great offense. You've got one of the top trios in Gabriel Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, and then Nathan McKinnon. And then you've got Cale Makar on defense. You've got a good defense. And then you've got good goaltending too. So they're kind of all the way around. And the only teams I can really think that beat them talent-wise overall are probably the Boston Bruins, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and maybe the Washington Capitals. Maybe. And that's saying something with Alex Ovechkin on him, by the way. So you're one of the top 5 in talent, and I don't really think there's another team in this division you can really say that about.
Yeah, so I'm looking through this right now. So what really puts the Avalanche above the Golden Knights? I mean, you already mentioned a little bit of the talent, but what's the definitive difference maker between those two teams?
I think, again, the definitive is just the talent. And the difference also comes in this, is they've got some young talent on that team also. So you've got Cale Makar, who's, again, very young, but still one of the best defensemen in the league. And we've kind of seen a little bit of a surge in really good young defensemen, which is an interesting trend. But, yeah, with that, and then having a great starting line, this team is definitely a Stanley Cup contender. They were in this year, and they were better than the Blues, even though they didn't beat them division-wise. They were better than the Blues, and they did so better in the playoffs also. I think they're definitely the clear favorites for this division.
Will this be one of the weaker divisions that we would see? Because I'm looking through it right now, and a lot of these teams were towards the bottom of their conferences when we were doing this during the last season. So I'm asking you this: is this one of the weaker potential divisions we could see this year? Because it certainly seems like that. Outside of the top 2 teams at the very least.
Yeah. Again, let's take a look at the what was the Atlantic Division, because we don't know what the divisions are going to be this year. But you had 2 teams that could really contend for a Stanley Cup in the Atlantic Division. You had 2 in the Metropolitan. You didn't really have one in the Pacific outside of the Golden Knights. And then with the Central, what it was, you had technically 3 to 3, depending on how you looked at it. So this division has 1, maybe 2, depending, probably 2 with the Golden Knights. Robin Lehner is a goalie; he'll keep it up there. But yeah, so that'd be one of the weaker divisions, because outside of the top 3 teams, there's not a whole lot there.
Yeah, it seems that way. I'm looking through the standings right now. It just certainly seems to be one of the weaker divisions for whatever reason. And let me ask you this, though. The Dallas Stars, you have them at 3rd in this division if you're doing the rankings.
Yeah.
This team did go to the Stanley Cup and they ended up losing. I'm pretty sure you actually picked them to win the Stanley Cup.
Yes, yes, I did. They had a great run.
Why do you have them at 3?
Good question. So notice they also did that with Anton Khudobin, their backup goalie, who played great, by the way. But you've got 2 reasons. One, I'm not be able to keep that up long term. You want to know one of the biggest things that they did during the Stanley Cup playoffs that was just different from normal everyday stars is they actually scored. It was team almost. They are consistently one of the bottom scorers in the league, and they just went off in the playoffs. It was different. I was surprised up. But to me, a part of it is just who do you think is better? And then also, after having a Stanley Cup run, teams regress. I mean, we've seen this with championships, right? This is what happens. So it's not necessarily that they'll be poor, but I think they'll kind of revert a little bit here back to normal.
Okay, I see. So you're just saying that they had maybe a hot run. Is that what you're saying? Or just got hot at the right time. Now they're going to kind of fall back to the pack?
Yeah, I mean, if they're able to keep the scoring up and also then keep their defense and goaltending the way it is, that would be ideal. Because
Go ahead. No, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
During the Stanley Cup playoffs, they kind of literally reversed everything they were. They couldn't score much. They started scoring, and then they started letting in a crap ton of goals. And you saw a completely different Dallas Stars. Granted, the scoring also had to do with the defense getting involved, which is a Dallas Stars thing. But it was so odd to see their offense explode and their defense and goaltending kind of fall apart a little bit.
What are the chances they're actually able to keep that offense going? I mean, you mentioned already that's the key, obviously, for them getting going. What are the chances? And you don't have to give me a specific answer. You don't have them. But do you think they're able to carry that momentum into this coming season, or is that going to be something that just kind of trails off?
I kind of see that as a fluke.
Okay.
I think they'll kind of revert back to the heavy defense, heavy goaltending. I mean, they've got possibly the best goaltending trio or one of the best goaltending duos in the entire National Hockey League with Anton Khudobin and Ben Bishop. And, great defense. I don't know where the scoring came from. Just a little bit from the veterans in Corey Perry and Pavelski. But I'm not sure they'll be able to sustain that. They didn't really do that during the regular season, and then they turned it on during the playoffs. But it would be very interesting to see the Dallas Stars be able to figure out both the offense and the defense.
Yeah, so
I don't think that'll be happening.
But they did. They would still be Stanley Cup contenders then.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you figure out that offense, that's the missing piece, right? You've got, again, definitely Stanley Cup worthy goaltending, and then you've got a Stanley Cup worthy defense. The piece that is missing is that offense.
All right, so just to read out your rankings one more time, in this new West Division, you had the Avalanche 1, the Golden Knights 2, Dallas Stars 3, Coyotes 4, Sharks 5, Kings 6, and then finally the Anaheim Ducks. What do you think?
Yes. Oh.
If you could have, just being crazy for a minute, if there was going to be one team in there that was going to just maybe upset the apple cart, one of those low-ranked teams that was going to rise up to the top, which one do you think that would be? Which one has the most potential here to be kind of an upset team this season?
Okay. I don't trust the Coyotes, just for the sake of they're kind of the meh team that they're kind of hanging on the fringe. You don't really know what they are. I don't expect them to be going on any sort of a run. You have the San Jose Sharks, who just a couple years ago, last year were a really good team. They made it to the third round of the playoffs. You got the Kings, who are in rebuild mode, and the same with the Ducks. So I'd probably have to go with the Sharks here. If they can kind of return, because they do have some of those same players from that run, by the way. If they can return to that form and just prove that this was kind of an off year, they've got a chance, but I'm not counting on it, and that's kind of why they're there.
All right, well, I guess, is there anything else you want to talk about news-wise for the NHL or anything else with your standings?
Just a quick note. For anybody that thought a couple of years ago Martin Jones was like a fantastic goalie, he's not. I'm sorry. I never particularly loved Martin Jones, and I don't think he's that fantastic of a goalie, and you kind of need a goalie to win a Stanley Cup, folks.
Gotta love the brutal, blunt comments. But anyways, We're going to move on quickly here to our college football news. Now, there were some college football games on today, actually. There's one going on right now between Oregon and Oregon State, where Oregon is leading 24-19. There's some other big games today. I'll just briefly run down the scoreboard. Iowa State University beat Texas 23-20 on a last-second missed field goal by Texas. They were trying to tie the game up, go to overtime. They missed wide left, I believe. The kicker had enough legs, just couldn't get through the field goal, couldn't get through the uprights, and Texas loses to ISU. And then Notre Dame beat UNC 31-17. Notre Dame, of course, is number 2 in the nation. UNC is number 19. They were tied, I believe. We're close to tied at halftime, but Notre Dame shut down UNC in the second half, unfortunately. I was really hoping for an upset there. And coming up tomorrow, we get Clemson versus Pitt. This is Clemson's first game in 2 or 3 weeks, actually, since the Notre Dame loss, because Florida State canceled or postponed our game last week. So this will be Trevor Lawrence's first action since getting COVID and Clemson's first action since losing to Notre Dame in a double overtime game. But I'm really not interested in all of that right now. What I want to talk about is the college football rankings. This is the stuff put out by the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Up to this point, we've been talking about the AP Top 25 poll. That's decided by the Associated Press. This is the actual rankings that would go into making the college football playoffs. And immediately the top 4 teams: number 1, Alabama; number 2, Notre Dame; number 3, Clemson; number 4, Ohio State. And I'm actually okay with these rankings so far because Ohio State does not deserve to be number 3. They don't deserve to be in the top 4 right now because they haven't played enough games yet.
Okay. See, for a second I was about to say, and the reason Sam Teets has brought this up is because he has a problem with it. You are okay with Notre Dame being ahead of Clemson.
Well, Notre Dame did beat Clemson, so you have to give them the edge now.
Okay.
But look,
this is not what I heard.
When Clemson beats Notre Dame in the conference championship game, then Clemson can jump Notre Dame, and then Clemson can be ahead. It's just a matter of waiting, though. I mean, we're going to beat them eventually. We just have to wait a few weeks.
You're spoiled with great sports teams, by the way. Clemson, Pittsburgh.
I have good taste. Yeah. I'm a Mets fan, though, so I can't really say that. I mean, I'm a Mets fan, so I take my losses sometimes. But looking at the rankings just really quickly, I gave you the top 4. Number 5 is Texas A&M. I don't see A&M being able to do anything here because they will not go to the SEC championship game because they are in the same division of the SEC as Alabama, which means basically there's no shot for them to move up from here. Florida is not, though. Florida will have a chance to play Alabama in the SEC championship game, and that maybe will give them a chance to get in. I think this is really down to a 6-team race. I know Cincinnati's right there at 8-0. I know Northwestern's there at 5-0. And with respect to those schools, really, it's going to come down to Florida, A&M, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Alabama. I think those are the 6 teams that are really going to matter here. Those are the 6 that are going to get a lot of attention as we get closer and closer to the college football playoffs.
Yeah, again, it usually you kind of know the teams before the season starts, but you can get 1 or 2 kind of thrown in the mix there you weren't expecting.
And to some extent, A&M and Florida are actually kind of surprising because they've been around the edge. They've always been top 25 teams, I feel like, for the past 5 or 6 years, but they have never been actually to this point. Florida's gotten close a couple of times since Tim Tebow left, but never been this close, I believe. With Kyle Trask at quarterback, they have a legitimate chance of being a top 4 team making the college football playoffs. And it's just such a weird year, though. It's so hard to determine these rankings. To me, there's only really 4 or 5 good teams in the country right now that I consider worthy of the college football playoffs. So it's kind of weird how this has worked out with all the games being postponed. I mean, Ohio State's played 4 games. Clemson's played 8 already. They should have played 9. It's just very weird how this all played out. And it's going to be interesting to see how it ends. But for now, we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants for this whole selection committee process.
Yeah, it makes it harder for everybody.
We will now get on to, I think, Sam's favorite segment of the show, and sometimes mine, depending on what he asks me. I think you're dreaming. So in this segment, basically, we go through, we each have a statement prepared. We're 2 statements prepared for each other, and we will tell the other person, is this thinking or dreaming? So basically, do we agree with them? Do we disagree? Are we going to yell at each other for a couple of minutes? We'll find out. But do you want to start first this time?
Sure, I'll start first, and because we already talked about Notre Dame, I had to change one of them, but we'll start with this one. The Steelers will end 15-1.
All right. Now, this is something I can get behind. Though I believe the correct answer is actually 16-0, unless I believe the correct ranking will be 16-0. I think they could go undefeated here. And you know what?
So am I dreaming then, or is this thinking?
I think you're thinking here, if we're just being honest. If we're being fully just honest here, you are thinking, because 15-1 is totally reasonable for Pittsburgh at this point. Their next couple of games, they played Baltimore twice in a row. That's interesting. They played No, they only played Baltimore once, so it's just because they moved the schedule around. So they played Baltimore here, then Washington, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Cleveland. I think they can beat Baltimore because Baltimore won't have Lamar Jackson, probably won't have Mark Ingram. I think that's a win. Washington's getting kind of hot right now, but I would still expect that to be a win. They'll beat Cincinnati in week 8. In week 17, they might not have anything to play for, so I don't know if they'll even play their stars, but I would expect them to beat Cleveland even if they did. The 2 question marks on the schedule for me are Buffalo and Indianapolis. They just narrowly lose to Buffalo last year without Ben Roethlisberger. But Josh Allen's gotten much better, so I don't really know how that's going to even out. I would still pick them to win that game. And the Colts are very hot and cold. If you can get to Phillip Rivers, though, you can put pressure on Phillip Rivers. You will win games because he can't move whatsoever. And the running game for Indianapolis is not that strong to begin with. So I think they're going to go. Honestly, I think they're going to go 16-0. I would not write off 15-1. Obviously, I would still very much accept that as a Steelers fan. 15-1 would be a great year. But I still think 16-0 is on the table for them.
Yeah, do remember though, Indianapolis did beat the Green Bay Packers, but at the same time, to your point, pass rush, and you guys have Watt, so
we have the better Watt currently, and we can stop the running. We have a very good defensive front right now. Our defensive front is extremely good, and we have led the NFL in sacks 3 years in a row now, I believe. So it's getting to a point where, I mean, if you're not a mobile quarterback and you don't have a very good run game to begin with, it's going to be very difficult to survive facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I would expect them, at most, I think they would lose 2 of these games, at most. So at best, they're going to finish the year 14-2. Or at worst, they're going to finish the year 14-2. At best, I see 16-0 as still being very possible.
I think Buffalo is probably your best shot at an upset there.
Yeah, I don't even know if that would be an upset at this point because Buffalo's playing very well. So you could have a situation where
it would be just for the sheer sake that the Steelers will be undefeated at that point in time.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm not running out Baltimore either. Baltimore, I know even without Lamar Jackson, Baltimore is a very scary team for Pittsburgh to play. This is the best rivalry in football right now, these two teams. So even without Lamar Jackson, who honestly hasn't had a great season so far, there's still a chance this turns into a close game. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out on Tuesday night. But I'm going to throw you one of mine at this point because you already gave me one of yours. I'll give you one of mine. All right. The Lions won't win another game this year.
I think that's being slightly too harsh. I think that's dreaming, despite the fact that, it's the Lions and they could do anything here. I will say they do have a tough schedule ahead of them. They've got the Bears, Packers, Titans, Buccaneers, and Vikings.
Yeah, however, I think we mentioned this a little bit briefly before the show. I think your best shot here is being the Bears. I know the Bears have a very good defense. You guys like Khalil Mack back there, Roquan Smith, Kyle Fuller. To me, though, the offense in Chicago is just so bad that you have an opportunity here. You could score 17 points all game and still potentially win.
Yeah, and my thing is this. The likelihood of losing all 5 of those, despite that all 5 of those are challenges, you might win 1 in there. I'll say the Lions win 1, maybe 2. But yeah, they should lose probably the majority of those games. And it's the Lions. Maybe they will lose all 5, but I'm going to go with dreaming for right now. They'll win 1 of those.
Yeah, I feel like you can write off the Packers, Titans, and Buccaneers games as losses right now. The close ones would be Chicago and Minnesota. But the Vikings keep playing the way they're playing right now. I think the Vikings will be a loss too, and your only chance will be Chicago.
Which, there's your 1 win.
Yeah, there's your 1 opportunity. All right, you got one more for me. Let's hear it.
All right, yeah, so I had to change this because we talked about this now, but UC is overrated. And, of course, Mike is now going to be pissed at me if he watches this.
You mean University of Cincinnati? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, not the University of California.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
UC relatively to me because you don't even live near here anyway.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering. Mike will not like that. Yeah, you're right about that. Mike will not like hearing that. Cincinnati, there are, I think 7th in the AP people. I have to pull the number back up, but they were ranked, I believe, was it 7 or 8 in the college football ranks? I'll have it up in front of me in a second. I don't think Cincinnati's.
They're 7 right now.
They're 7 right now. I don't think they're. No, I think you're dreaming. I don't think they're overrated. I think this is probably a proper ranking for them right now. They are undefeated. They've beaten Army. Army was ranked 22nd when they beat them. They beat SMU. SMU was ranked 16 in the 8 people. And they beat Army by 14 points. They beat SMU by almost, they beat them by 29 points. They just beat UCF this past weekend. The past weekend. So they've won quite a few good games so far. I don't think they're playing in a tough enough competition. Mike always like to harp on Clemson not playing tough competition. Clemson has beat number 10 Miami, and they beat them in a blowout. And they just lost to number 2 Notre Dame in double overtime without their starting quarterback. Let me put it this way. Cincinnati has played much weaker competition than Clemson. I don't want to hear it from Mike. He's played much weaker competition so far this year. I don't think they actually played a team that's ranked currently in the college football power rankings. I don't think there's a team ranked on this board that Cincinnati has played and beat it. So to me, the Bearcats have not beaten anyone of extreme standing within the college football world. However, I do believe number 7, number 8 right now for them is about fair because of the pieces they have. They've got some good players. They've got a good coach. I'm willing to give them this spot right now, but I don't think they'll make the college football playoffs because they have not played or beaten anyone tough enough to consider being a marquee win.
Gotcha. All right, you got another one for me?
Yeah, Mike's gonna hate me if he sees this. I hope he doesn't. I hope it's just buried deep enough in the video that he's not gonna end up watching this part because I'm going to hear it on Monday if he does see this. All right, so my next part for you is the Kansas City Chiefs are locked to make the Super Bowl.
See, I've talked about this a little bit. I've talked about how they are the next dynasty. If you liked the New England Patriots thing, fun fact, it's the Kansas City Chiefs now. And remember, they were one play away. If it not had been for one offsides, they would have beaten the Patriots and been in the Super Bowl back-to-back years. I think it's fair to say they have a significant and the best shot at getting to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't necessarily call them a lock, though, because you've got Pittsburgh, who is playing fantastically. But there's just, I don't know. This is just kind of a gut thing where I'm like, I'm not sure I totally trust Pittsburgh. And at the same time, you do have the Buffalo Bills, although they won't. I'm just calling it now. They are not going to the Super Bowl. They could potentially win a playoff game or two, but they won't be going to the Super Bowl. So I think really the two teams you're looking at are probably the Steelers, Kansas City, and again, then maybe Buffalo. And out of those three, I'd pick Kansas City. So I don't necessarily say this is thinking or dreaming. It's kind of like right in the middle because I wouldn't call them locks, but they've got probably the best chance in my opinion.
Yeah, if I had to bet right now, I'd say it's either them or Pittsburgh. So honestly, I'm not going to – here's the thing. I'm not betting against the Pittsburgh Steelers for the entire rest of the year. I'm taking Pittsburgh in every single game no matter what competition they're playing. But at the same point, I'll be realistic here. I really like Kansas City to make the Super Bowl right now. I love what Patrick Mahomes is doing. It just comes down to, for me, can that defense get things together here towards the end of the year? I think there's a real chance with Tyrann Mathieu being that leader of that unit. If they get Frank Clark and Chris Jones healthy up front, I do think there's a chance they pull together here and that defense improves. I think they've only actually let up over 21 points 3 times this year. So they've actually been a very solid defense with the exception of the 2 games against the Raiders and the most recent one against the Panthers. Other than that, they've been very good all year. So I think they're close to a lock, as close to a lock as you can get in this very crazy and hectic year where there really isn't a team to me that's dominating above everyone else. So I think this would be as close you can get to a lock. But again, nothing's for sure this year. I just believe that Andy Reid's coaching really well right now, and obviously Patrick Mahomes and all those weapons offensively just make the Chiefs arguably the most dominant team in the NFL right now.
Which is crazy considering they are not undefeated.
Yeah, they had the one loss to the Raiders, and they almost lost again to Oakland, but to Las Vegas at this point. But really, I mean, if Pittsburgh played the same level of difficulty and schedule that Kansas City's played, I'm not sure they would be undefeated either. I mean, obviously they would because I'm a Steelers fan. They would never lose a game. But really, I don't think, just thinking about it, the difficulty schedule is a little bit different for a Super Bowl winning team versus Pittsburgh, who wasn't even a playoff team last year. That plays a little bit of a role in it. I still think Kansas City is probably the best team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Again, there's a little gut feeling I'm not sold on Pittsburgh.
How dare you? You'll be sold by the end of the year. Don't worry. When they're holding that Lombardi trophy, McGinnis, I don't want to hear "I told you so" coming from your mouth.
So here's the thing. Because that won't be happening, I really won't have to worry about it.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I guess that's all we have for today, though, right, McGinnis?
Yeah, I think that's all we got. We'll be back here again 9:30 every Friday. I like doing these, man. These are fun.
Yeah, these are fun ones. But I do have to remind you that, the holiday season's coming upon us, and we have to get our Christmas gifts out here. And I know what? It helps the show if you would go to manscaped.com and use promo code TGT20 for 20% off your order and free shipping.
Christmas package.
Hey, it's a person. Can you imagine? There's a nice little parcel. There's a nice little present under the Christmas tree, and you unwrap it, and it's this box of Manscaped products. Could you imagine how happy that would make you, Sam McGinnis? It would just be fantastic.
No. But imagine this: if somebody's wife or girlfriend, how either insulting or embarrassing would that be to open it up and then be like, wait a minute.
What do you mean, McGinnis? It's a great product. What are you talking about? No one would ever be embarrassed by opening a Manscaped box in front of their family. What are you talking
about? Right. Oh.
Yeah, no, seriously, it would really help out the show if you go to manscaped.com. And if you're considering, I mean, honestly, like the razors, we joke about what you're supposed to use this for, but honestly, you can use the razors for anything, really. It's just the same as you would go out and buy in a store. Although I think they're actually better quality and you're cheaper if you just buy the whole box than what you would get in the store. You don't have to constantly go back to it. So I would actually argue this is a pretty good value for what you're getting. So please, if you have the money or the time, go to manscaped.com, promo code TGG20, helps out the show, helps out the Crew and Truth Network, and we really appreciate anything you can do. But like I said, we will be back every Friday at 9:30. Yeah. We love doing this show. It's a lot of fun. And for anyways, guys, we appreciate you dropping by, and we hope to see you all next week.